Hey, folks, welcome back to the Carl Zahn Show, another edition. Obviously, all kinds of stuff going on, lots to talk about here. We took a week off, so now we're kind of doubled up on information. By the time this video gets edited and posted, the DNC will likely be underway in Chicago. That starts Monday, and we're taping this on Sunday. So all forecasts say that the DNC is going to be crazy with pro-Hamas protesters. I've heard numbers of like tens of thousands of these people getting bussed in. So that's going to be interesting in and of itself, not to mention the convention itself, where I guess they have President Biden speaking Monday, the first day of the convention, which is kind of counterintuitive because normally he would kind of be the headliner, so you'd have him at the end of the week. Clearly, they want to, just like you might eat your Brussels sprouts first when you go out to dinner and get them out of the way. I would say that President Biden is the Brussels sprout of the Democratic National Convention, and we are going to hold our nose and eat him tomorrow night and get him out of the way. So the DNC will be fascinating, I'm sure, culminating with a riveting and dynamic speech from the intellectual wellspring that is Kamala Harris at the end of the week. That should be absolutely stunning. I'm sure we're going to learn more about Venn diagrams, school buses, and maybe even something about her years under the desk with Willie Brown. Another interesting thing I'm noticing, restaurants all over the place, word salad is showing up on the menu. Now, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be some kind of facetious, tongue-in-cheek jab at Kamala Harris, but we were just out for dinner a few days ago, and I noticed on the appetizer section, Kamala Harris word salad with walnuts and cranberry. So kind of unusual, There have been, of course, over the years, Caesar salad, Cobb salad, these kind of unique salads that took on a life of their own and just became, they show up on the menu. So maybe this word salad is just going to become part of the American menu lexicon, as it were. And maybe even eventually shortened into just knob salad. That way you could have Cobb salad, knob salad, and because Kamala Harris is a bit of a knob, I think that would be just fantastic. So Trump out rocking it, Pennsylvania, big rally, all kinds of stuff going on, and for some reason now Trump has decided in another inexplicable Trump move, he seems to be getting himself embroiled in a dispute with Joe Rogan, of all people, who has like a gazillion subscribers and viewers. I guess Joe Rogan had made some comment that he likes RFK Jr., didn't endorse RFK Jr., he hasn't endorsed anybody, but he spoke favorably of RFK Jr., and for some reason that triggered Trump into going down that road. So I'm not sure that's a good idea, but what do I know? There's only been probably 150 times since Trump started in 2015 where I have said to myself, oh my God, terrible move, bad idea. And then Trump turns out somehow makes this stuff work for him. I don't know that that'll be the case this time around. But nonetheless, my gut tells me don't get into an imbroglio with Joe Rogan at this time. The poll numbers, if you actually believe them, continue to be very tight. I'm not sure I buy that. But either way, they're doing what they're supposed to do, which is, favorably put a favorable light on Kamala Harris and this kind of euphoric euphoric reception to Kamala Harris, which is in and of itself amazing. If you think about it, it was only a month and a half ago that Joe Biden was adamantly saying that he wasn't going to step down and only the Lord coming down himself could talk Biden into stepping down. And since the Lord was not available to come down and visit Joe Biden, they went for the obvious second choice, which was Nancy Pelosi, who basically said, unless you want this to go down like a mob hit, like Carmine Galante, then we can do this the easy way or the hard way. So all word is that Biden, the popular word is that Biden behind the scenes is seething. I certainly don't know that. How the hell would I know? But it does make sense because you haven't seen Biden hardly at all. You haven't seen Joe Biden at all. So it's not a real stretch of the imagination to imagine that Joe and Joe Biden are secretly seething and, as we speak, probably sticking pins in a voodoo doll or voodoo dolls of Michelle and Barack Obama. So just amazing stuff going on. Trump continues to pull huge crowds. I think the daunting number that they have to get over is the 75% or so of Americans who feel as though the country is moving in the wrong direction. So I think that ultimately is going to be a defining moment. My prediction, for whatever it's worth, or expectation, or let's just lower that to guess, is that there'll be a post-convention bump for Kamala Harris. Her numbers will go up a little bit. We are kind of in this honeymoon phase. And then if this debate between Trump and Harris actually happens on September 10th, that just has to be a bloodbath. I don't see any other way. Oops, did I say bloodbath? I don't see any other scenario where he just takes her apart on stage because she's just so inept at speaking off the cuff. I mean, we've all heard it, her unburdened by the past and, a community bank is part of the community, and that's why the community needs community banks because we're a community. I mean, she is stunningly stupid when she tries to speak off the cuff. So I have to think that this debate is going to be like probably have viewership like the Thriller in Manila. This is going to be like a pay-per-view event. And I also don't see any way that ends well for Kamala Harris. So I think the numbers will turn after the debate. I hope they do. And then I think if Trump begins to regain some momentum and regain some poll numbers after that, that as we move into mid-September, October, that's the perfect time in the last month and a half before the election. That's the perfect time to be gaining momentum in the numbers. Another interesting news thing, New York County has just passed a law that says you can't wear a mask. So finally, years after all this COVID BS, New York County has said it's going to be illegal to wear a mask in public because it is, as it always used to be, by the way. So this is a return to normalcy before the new normal, but actually normal, where you couldn't wear a mask in public because it concealed your identity. And typically, anyone wearing a mask was either committing or about to commit a crime, right? So there was a time when if you wore a mask or a kerchief like a Wild West road agent bank robber, that was a red flag. And so now New York County is introduced a new law that says you can't wear a mask in public for those reasons. So that's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. We got so used to this mask thing. One of my favorite comedians, Sebastian Maniscalco, did a joke years ago, and this was well before COVID or any of this stuff. And the paraphrase, him and his wife had bought a house. They moved into a new neighborhood. He went and knocked on the neighbor's door next door to kind of introduce himself. And the guy answers the door wearing a operating room mask and says to Sebastian, hey, what are you doing? And Maniscalco's response is, no, what are you doing? And you answer the door wearing a mask. the first thing out of your mouth has to be an explanation of why you're wearing a mask. And of course, that was normal back then. And then he goes on to suggest that the guy was dismembering bodies in his basement or something like that. But stop and think about it. That was actually comedic material because it was so unusual. And I would be in complete agreement with that. If someone pre-COVID and all of that, you saw someone wearing one of these blue, like, operating room masks, this is totally unusual and unsettling. And yes, I agree with Sebastian. The first words out of your mouth has to be an explanation of why you have a friggin' mask on. So going through my scribbled out notes here, UK, everyone knows by now that the UK is just kind of coming apart at the seams. Huge protests over there in the wake of, I believe it was 3 young girls, like 6, 7, 9 years old, getting stabbed to death by an immigrant. And now this has set the streets on fire in the UK. So if you remember Brexit, that was British exit from the EU, the European Union, and that was a big deal when it happened, but they said, we don't like the EU immigration policy, which was a constant stream of Muslims. If you remember several years ago, the just inundation of Europe with mostly Muslim immigrants. And it changed the culture of all these European countries, even Sweden of all places. And the UK took a huge influx of these people, and it changes the culture, the heritage of the country. So you can call that racist or you can call it whatever you want, but I don't think that's fair. Every country has its heritage. It has its predominant ethnicity. It has its cultural traditions. And when you poison that with a big influx of a completely different culture, different religions, all of that, it has an effect, and part of the effect is that it's unsettling for people, and a lot of people just don't like it. So I'm looking at what's happening in the UK as a precursor to what's coming here, almost inevitably, and almost surely in the wake of the election in November, regardless of which way it goes. I think we are going to have some rocky times ahead of us post-election. Just so much interesting stuff going on. Kamala Harris, she brings out these kind of word salad type, campaign slogans. So one of them is now, I'm going to build on day one an opportunity economy. What does that mean? I mean, that's what the economy is already, is really an opportunity economy. And everyone has an opportunity to follow their career path, make a success of themselves, educate themselves, further yourself and your family station in, your community and your life. So again, it's like one of these typically Democratic, kind of stupid like labels of, on day one, I'm going to do an opportunity economy. Okay. I mean, what does that mean? And a part of it means is, because she's also said that she's going to institute price controls. Again, this is the Democratic mantra, the greedy corporations, pay your fair share of tax, price gouging. I don't know that there's a lot of price gouging going on. I mean, if I feel like I'm getting gouged on a price somewhere, I go get that product somewhere else. That's a free market capitalistic economy. And so price controls, which is basically the federal government intervening, has always failed. It failed when the government tried to control milk prices. If you think back several decades, government comes in, we're going to try to control milk prices. That was the expected disastrous outcome of dairy farms going out of business, the federal government buying out dairy farms with taxpayer dollars. So in other words, we're going to give you $1 million to ship all your cows to Canada, where those cows were either killed and sold for meat or something else happened. I mean, the long and short of it is complete cluster when the federal government got involved and said, we're going to control or try to fix milk prices. Disaster. Same thing when the federal government said, we're going to try to control airline ticket prices. And they, interjected themselves into the airline industry. It's just so stupid because we do it over and over and over again and expect a different result. And as we all know, that is the, kind of matchbook cover definition of insanity. I don't know if it's insane or not. To me, it's just stupid to do the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result. How many times would you touch a hot stove with your tongue before you realize that hurt and I got a 3rd-degree burn and I'm not going to lick a hot stove anymore? And if you're Kamala Harris, the answer to that is over and over and over again because I'm that painfully stupid. The war against J.D. Vance, this is just so interesting. They're actually coming out now. There are people in the Rust Belt, so forth, that are calling him a fake hillbilly. Now, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, to me, a fake hillbilly is like Jethro or Grandma Clampett. I don't understand the fake hillbilly thing with J.D. Vance. It's documented his early years of first being in Ohio and then in the Appalachians and Kentucky and growing up in what is commonly referred to as hillbilly country or hillbilly environment. So, and then on top of that, I don't know what they're hoping to achieve by calling someone a fake hillbilly. It's like, okay, I was really pro J.D. Vance. If you've listened to the show, I admire his life story. I admire his achievements. I really admire his intellect and his ability to kind of articulate himself in a really controlled, emotional way. But now that I know he's a fake hillbilly, I am no longer in favor of J.D. Vance. I can tolerate a lot of things in my life. One thing I won't tolerate is a fake hillbilly. No, not going to happen on my watch. Tampon Tim. Got to talk about Tim Walz, or as I like to refer to him, the last waltz. Again, Kamala Harris's brilliant VP pick. She couldn't pick Shapiro from Pennsylvania for obvious reasons. He's a Jew. So ended up with this guy Waltz, and he is just unraveling at warp speed. We've all heard about his kind of overglorified explanation of his military career. J.D. Vance called it stolen valor. That might be a little bit too strong. But the guy did claim that he was in battle and at war. And the fact of the matter is he was never in an active war zone. He was a National Guard member for 24 years, which my understanding is always like you go away once a month with all your buddies and, they play paintball and do stuff like that. Not diminishing being a member of the National Guard, not diminishing Waltz's military career, but when you misrepresent your military career and background for political gain, that's pretty slippery and sleazy. And of course, it brings to mind Dick Blumenthal in Connecticut, who famously lied about being in Vietnam. I mean, not only was he not in Vietnam, he was not even in the military, to the best of my knowledge. He definitely did not serve in Vietnam. And at the time, it was a huge scandal and all of that. But he has been handily reelected in Connecticut as a Democrat every election cycle since then. So it really doesn't, for Democrats, it doesn't bother people. And so Tim Walz, and again, this guy was like pure evil as a governor. The list of things he did under COVID, he developed a COVID snitch line. So he encouraged people to snitch on their neighbors during COVID, like, you got to call a number because you saw your neighbor accept a pizza delivery without sterilizing the box and euthanizing the delivery boy in case he had COVID. I mean, all these purely nasty things that he did as governor under COVID. Really horrible stuff. I mean, just leave party politics aside and just think about how awful that is. So he was really a monster. He almost makes Kamala Harris look like Rush Limbaugh. I mean, he is further left than she is, which is hard to believe. And of course, they're calling him Tampon Tim because he's one of the other things he does was he wanted to, he did in fact have tampons put in boys' men's rooms at public schools. Again, 4th, 5th, 6th grader, boys' room with tampon dispensers. Brilliant. What's really fascinating to me about Tim Walz is his wife, and she was on record as saying that during the BLM riots, she liked to sleep with the window open so she could smell the burning rubber. So aside from, when I heard that, one of the first things that popped into my mind is what a remarkably easy woman to shop for. I think of all the times over the years where I've struggled trying to pick out the right piece of jewelry for my wife or the right clothing because, men always stumble around with this. And now to find out that this guy's got a wife who's happy with a used Michelin that you can light on fire. I mean, my God, what a wonderful woman. Christmas shopping must be easy around the Waltz household. I mean, you just go to the dump and pick up a used tire and some lighter fluid, and your wife is just absolutely euphoric. But aside from the obvious wealth of comedic material there, think about what an awful statement that is. I like to sleep with the windows open so I could smell the burning rubber during the BLM riots. Kind of like someone in Germany in World War II saying how, they like to sleep with the windows open so they could smell the burning bodies wafting through the breeze from the concentration camps. Totally horrific. And to me, when a statement like that from Tim Walz's wife, it's kind of a through the looking glass moment because it really lets you see how purely evil these people are. I mean, that's evil. If you think about what that really means, aside from the fact that she's easy to shop for and undoubtedly will have a line of scented candles coming along soon, burnt rubber candles. But think about how almost demonic that is. I mean, it's almost demon-like to think that I enjoyed the wafting scent from the riots during the BLM escapade, and you can be sure she was safely enjoying that scent from her gated community with her security around the governor mansion or whoever they were then. So yeah, it's easy to say I enjoyed the scent of death and destruction and looting during the BLM riots. But she should have added the caveat, especially because I knew that I was completely safe from it, living with my security and my gated community. What a horrible, horrible woman. I love the smell of burning rubber. And who doesn't? So the debate, September 10th, I know I'm kind of all over the place here, but that's how I roll. The debate, September 10th, I think that's a turning point. Again, I'm not going to make the mistake of doing a challenge here that I'll eat a live ant again. I learned my lesson, unlike Democrats and making the same mistake over and over again. I learned my lesson about making big claims here on the show that I'll eat a live ant or whatever. But it is still hard for me to believe that this is actually going to happen. Trump and Kamala Harris on a stage, and she has no teleprompter, no notes, and it's a free-for-all. Hard to imagine that that's going to happen. But I was wrong about Biden and Trump. It did happen. In hindsight, I think it happened because they knew the outcome and they saw that as a way to get rid of Biden. That I think they knew that Biden was going to collapse, and that would let the Democratic Party move ahead in trying to destroy him and have him removed from the ticket or have him step aside. Could be wrong, never going to know. And that's the case with a lot of this stuff, is just we're never going to know what really happened, but it's still fairly interesting. And then the one thing I wanted to close with was, we get caught up here in politics in America, obviously, and how could you not with everything that's happening here in the country and the warp speed that it's happening at, from Biden's failure in the debate, excuse me, to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which continues to unfold with really disturbing revelations. But I also wanted to talk quickly about Jordan Peterson. So if you don't know Jordan Peterson, he's a very famous psychiatrist from Canada. He became world famous and a kind of YouTube celebrity when many years ago the Canadian government tried to pass a law that said you have to address people by their woke pronouns. And Jordan Peterson came ahead and said, I will address someone by their pronouns if they asked me to do that on a personal one-on-one level. But he said, I will not do it if the government mandates me to do it. I will not kneel to government-mandated speech. That stand put him on the map. He became a very ardent spokesperson against woke culture. And now, last year the Canadian government said if he wants to keep his psychiatric license, he's going to have to be re-educated by the Canadian government. Jordan Peterson probably has an IQ of like 180, but now this re-education is actually going to take place. It's going to be very interesting to watch. I almost feel bad for any bureaucrat in Canada that feels like they're going to re-educate Jordan Peterson. But the reason I bring it up is because this is very interesting. What happens in other places, and often Canada, is a precursor to what's coming here. And this is a very, very interesting case. This is the government telling Jordan Peterson, if you want to keep your psychiatric degree, your doctor status that you worked very hard for and went through medical school and maintained over a 40-year period, and he's very well regarded in his field, if you want to keep your license, we're going to force you to be re-educated. So think about what that means. Again, this is underlying this to me is what's very interesting. Where does that end if that continues? The re-education of citizens by their government in order to keep a license, keep your job, keep your stature, keep whatever, or maybe just keep your freedom eventually. Re-education. Governmental re-education. Roll that around on the tongue for a few minutes, and I urge people to pay attention to that. Jordan Peterson is accepting this and taking it on a bit like a gladiator, and I can see why. I think he's going to have some fun with this, but it's going to be very interesting. But like I said, what's most important to me is the underlying event, which is they have forced him to, if you want to keep your degree and your practice, you will be re-educated by the Canadian government. The good thing for Jordan Peterson is, and he has said this, he goes, I don't need my doctor's license. I don't need my degree. I don't need my practice. I don't make my living that way anymore. But he's going to do this just as a point, as standing up and basically saying, no, I'm not going to let you take my degree and my practice that I've worked very hard for my whole life, and I'm very well regarded in my industry. I'm not going to let you take that, so I will accept your re-education. And they don't know what that means. They don't know if it's 3 weeks, 3 hours, 3 years. Nobody knows what it means because it's never been done before. But I would say pay very close attention to that. And then quickly, I am like a squirrel crossing the road here, and I apologize for that. I had to go quickly back to Tim Walz, who the latest thing is he has a DWI in 1995 where he claimed that he failed the field sobriety test because of hearing impairment that he suffered during his military service. So I wanted to go back to that to get that in, because this is another element of the Democrats, how nothing is too low, nothing is too slimy, nothing is too squirmy. Going to use his military background to say, this is why I failed a field sobriety test. If you're ever undergoing a field sobriety test, try that one on the cop and see how that goes over for you. Unbelievable. These people will stop at nothing. I think Walz was a bad pick. I think she's figuring that out now. That may very well come back to haunt her. But what's going to haunt her most, Kamala Harris, is herself and her own lack of intellectual acumen, I believe. She cannot speak unscripted. She cannot speak off the cuff. And I think, she hasn't done an interview yet. It's amazing. She was installed as president, first time in American history that this has happened, and she hasn't done a single press interview in over 3 weeks. It's pretty stunning if you stop and think about it. All that said, I am just about off to get an English muffin and a word salad at my local diner. Keep the blue side up, like and subscribe. We're trying to grow the channel, so if you like it, click the like button, subscribe, or do that dopey stuff. Feel free to comment. We will see you next week, and by all means, keep the blue side up.